Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Cinematic Conversations. I hope all of you who are here have had a chance to watch Spelling the Dream, a really wonderful film. And we have the director and several other people with us. So, Sam, how are you, and what's going on in your life right now?
Hey Bart, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. It does feel a little bit like Groundhog's Day these last 10 months. I'm looking forward to 2021. Clean slate. We're gonna start fresh. We're gonna think positive. And I'm in Connecticut. Apparently there was snow around New York City and around other areas. We didn't get any snow today. So I was a little bummed about that. Would have liked to looked out the window and seen some flurries. But otherwise, life is good. I have a year and a half old daughter, and
Hmm.
she full of life is an understatement. And she keeps my wife and I on our toes 24/7.
Well, I mean, this is a good time to be home, and I think that's a really wonderful gift that you have. So, Sam, how did you get interested in doing this film? And it's like everybody knows about Spellbound, this incredible film which drew the world's attention to this world, but this film is really different, very different, and very important.
The film honestly wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the producer, Chris. We were working at Business Insider at the time, and I had just done a documentary series on esports. We followed a team based out in California. They were trying to get to the world's largest stage, the national championship of esports for the game of League of Legends. So that had been well received at the company. That had been well received on YouTube. And I will punt this to Chris in a second, but Chris came to me because he had an idea. And he basically wanted to take this idea because he thought it had elements of the esports doc. So he tossed it to me, and like that was the basic genesis of it. So let me punt it to Chris for a sec, so he can kind of give you the sense of like why he even came to me, and what was going on in his mind.
So, Chris, first of all, where are you right now? Where are you coming to us from, and how are you doing?
Hey Bart, I'm in Brooklyn, New York right now, where it is. I think it's finished snowing. We keep on the precipitation combo. Yeah, I'm doing well, gearing up for Christmas and trying to hit up local holiday markets. Thankfully, they're still open, which is like one of my favorite things here. And just trying to stay sane and healthy and all good things so far.
So you were working at Business Insider doing films about esports and doing one in particular about that. And then when did you find out about this universe? I mean, did you read an article someplace or did you meet someone?
Yeah. So Sam is the whole video guy. My whole background is in print and writing, and um, probably for about 6 years before even moving to BI and meeting Sam, I kind of was into spelling bees. I'd watched them growing up in middle school and played along, and just kind of been a nerd about that stuff. And it was probably within the last 6 years before meeting Sam that I noticed that all of the winners kind of in succession were Indian American. And to me, this was a really interesting anomaly and something that it didn't seem like other people were talking about. But it seemed like it was worthy of kind of greater scrutiny and just celebration. And
Hmm.
so when I learned that and came across Sam's work at work in the office, I thought, oh man, this is like a perfect opportunity to dovetail our interests. Sam's also a big sports guy. I am too. Love competition stories,
Hmm.
and this felt like the best way to kind of merge those interests and skill sets.
So
And
we pitched it to Business Insider,
of
and
course.
we wanted to do it with the company.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know how the story ends, but they passed. It was something that they saw a lot of. They saw potential in it, but it wasn't something that they wanted to put forth a budget, do it on spec.
Hmm.
Uh, so Chris and I still wanted to do it. We both were like, this story has legs. I mean, we did some preliminary research. Akash and his family were actually some of the first that we reached out to when we were looking to talk with spellers. And that's why we knew that there was something and like we couldn't let it go. So the next step was getting an attorney, because when you start at companies like that, all the ideas that originate at the company are owned by the company. Got an attorney and made sure that we could get the idea back, and then it became the multi-year process until eventually it got on Netflix.
So yeah, little did you know when you started this how long the journey would be. Um, so talk about like getting to meet people in the community, which is, when you make a film, a documentary film, access is really so crucial to, you know, making good film. And clearly the two of you are white people, and you are making a film about a community. So how did you like meet these people, connect to them, talk to them, and get their trust?
From the start, we always wanted to be as honest and true to the story. Um, be ourselves. I mean, we are curious people. The work that we've done, whether Chris is writing or in my past films, they always take a very non-biased tone, telling both sides, just wanting to let the story unfold. And we knew that we were going to have that approach. And then honestly, it was asking people, it was asking for advice, asking to tell their story, say what our vision is, why we were interested in, just like we just explained, but bringing that forth when we would have these initial discussions. And it really went from almost like person to person, organization to organization. When we told our story, what we thought was interesting, we got so many responses like, yeah, I've noticed this too. I'm pretty curious about it as well. I don't know that I could explain it, but let's go on this journey and try to figure this out. And always coming from that place of honesty and wanting to seek the truth, and being very confident in that we're not looking to put words in people's mouths. We're not looking to tell the story that isn't there just for pure, let's say, marketing purposes. People understood that, and I think they generally connected with our passion for this story and where we came from. I mean, simple as something as Chris been watching it for years and just casually noticed. And I think that curiosity and wanting to ask why, I think people really resonated with that. And so many doors opened, and so many people really wanted to just tell their story, because this was an opportunity that they could do that. And at the time, not a lot had been done about this story. You had an occasional article here or there, but nothing in depth as we went. And I think that was another part of it too.
So, Chris, since you're the producer, so going back into the origin story, you get a lawyer, you put a company together. Then there is this little thing called raising the money, because this required a little bit of travel and a lot of time and a lot of years of your life. How this is like the thing that separates the film that's a good idea from one that actually gets made.
Yeah, yeah. I was saving up a lot of money from my grandmother's birthday cards. No, I'm kidding. Sam and
I have your grandmother.
So yeah, that's a good point. So the way that Sam skipped a few steps going from lawyer to Netflix, understandably so. But one of those steps was a Kickstarter. We kind of knew that in order to kind of sell people on the idea and the strength of the story, it was helpful to have kind of like a minimum viable product, like have something that showed it in kind of the earliest forms. And so in, I believe it was October of 2016, we ran a Kickstarter and put together a trailer the prior summer. We attended some local bees and did some interviews, kind of unknowingly interviewing one of the future champs in like a third grade classroom. It's kind of funny to look back on that. So the Kickstarter was successful. We raised, I think, about 11 or 12 grand, and that helped to kind of snowball some of the expenses that we needed to meet. And from there, that helped push us towards kind of creating a business plan, and then reaching out to members of the South Asian spelling community. There's a tremendous organization called the North South Foundation that is widely beloved and instrumental in helping young spellers achieve success
Mm,
on a national stage. And they also put on their own bees and
mm.
host a lot of educational programs. And we had a lot of support from them in early conversations, and felt like it was worth sharing our fundraising needs and investment opportunities with people, many of whom were first-time investors. And so a lot of those Skype conversations around Christmas time of 2016 were around the opportunity to tell the story and to the platform that we were trying to offer people, and just share that message of authenticity and coming from a place of good faith.
And if I remember back in 2016, Kickstarter was relatively new. I mean, not completely new, but I mean, Kickstarter seems kind of oversaturated at the moment, and I think it was a good time to be doing a Kickstarter campaign, and it was a good way to get that first seed money to sort of keep you going and get to that a kind of good place. So, how did you approach the bees? Because there's the formal bees, the real bees, and then there are all these other things. And doing this, you obviously need buy-in to be there and to freely talk to people as things are happening. How did that come about?
The the bees were something that we always knew were going to be integral. They were going to move the story forward, and they were going to be that moment of competition and that fast-paced roller coaster of emotion in between those quieter moments at home with your spellers, learning about their families, learning about how they study, etc. And we knew we wanted to chart the progress of the bees. And we felt the best way to do that was the bee right before the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which are the regionals. You
Mhm.
win your regional, you get to go to the Scripps National Spelling Bee, along with showcasing some of the Indian American spelling bees, including, like Chris said, the North South Foundation and the South Asian Spelling Bee.
Mhm.
And those are typically very open and very media friendly. Like, they always get so much coverage with the local newspapers, the local television media. I think the biggest thing was letting them know what we wanted to do, what our vision was, and ensuring that we frankly weren't in the way of the spellers, because ultimately you didn't want anything that was going to um, take them off their game,
Sure.
make them feel uncomfortable, make that you're tipping the scale towards someone. So there was a little bit of that when we were talking with the different the PR arm of the bees to ensure that this is how we're going to do it. You know, we'll be good at everything. And then, I mean, you fast forward and you get to the Scripps National Spelling Bee. We were there a number of years, and that is just showtime. That is when it happens again, and I know it will. If you haven't been there, you need to go. It's free to the public, massive ballroom in Washington, D.C. If they could bottle that energy, bottle that production value, um, like you would just have a smile from ear to ear, because there's just so much energy there. And yes, it's captured on stage and it's captured in the film, it's captured on ESPN. But when you're there, like, you really understand the magic of the spelling bees. And I think it's such an interesting progression that you see these bees going from your regional, going to the North South Foundation, South Asian, and then you get to the big stage. Like, you see the production value get up, 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 and like, to get on that stage, like, it's a really, really very cool, I think, kind of sequence to see how bigger things get, and if you get that opportunity to go to the bee.
Yeah, it remind me of that. What was that series about chess that was just recently on? And you see the regional small chess messages, and then up to when it,
Queen's Gambit,
Queen's
right?
Gambit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely had that sense to it. So speaking of the big show, as opposed to the regional shows and the smaller shows, um, when you get there, you have ESPN, and in a sense, ESPN changed the face of spelling bees. I mean, having it on ESPN, and characters talk about that. I'm going to be on ESPN. It's like it's a big deal. And it does sort of reflect that sense of competition, but changes like what the normal competition on ESPN was. So did you have any issues with them in terms of working with them, because they have their rights, the rights to it, and then there's a lot of kind of, once you get working with something connected to the Disney Corporation, you know, that's when lawyers get involved and things can get complex.
There is a great thing that any filmmaker, someone in media should know about, and it's called fair use. Fair use, and I won't get into the whole details of the doctrine, but it helps in nonfiction content of being able to use things for commentary purposes without having to pay the insane licensing fees that these companies will ask of you. And this was an independent film in the beginning. Obviously, Netflix came on board when the film was complete. So we were fortunate that we had very good fair use attorneys that guided us through this and were able to review the cuts to say that our content, the ESPN content, met the criteria for fair use. So we did not have to incur those very high licensing fees. Like, it's something crazy. For like 15 to 30 seconds, you're paying thousands of dollars. Yeah. So we were able to navigate that. But I think the other part was, because it's still scripts, if you go there with cameras, that's your footage. So we didn't have a ton of ESPN footage that we had to use, because we had footage from 2016, and then we have footage from 2017 that we shot, with a crew of 8 to 10 people there for multiple angles. And we utilized that because obviously that was the plan all along. But thankfully Scripps operates that way, where you can go in and you can film and that's your footage. But beyond that, there were no issues. The Scripps Spelling Bee was extremely accommodating. They were very happy with the film. While they didn't have official participation, they saw the film. They were able to, share it on their Facebook platform, etc. Because it came out when the Bee had just been canceled. So it was a very nice relationship that we had with them, because ultimately it highlights the Bee. It really does. And I think ended up coming out at a great time when the Bee had been canceled, and was able to give everyone just a little reminder of just how wonderful the Bee is.
Yeah. And so why don't we introduce our guest here? And so how did you first meet him? And what was the first interaction? I want to hear it from you, Sam, and also from Akash.
Well, I'm going to pass it to Chris, because Chris has a really good story. Because it starts with, we had developed a relationship with the North-South Foundation director, and he had told us that, director and founder, and he had told us about Akash, because Akash had recently been on Steve Harvey's show, Little Big Shots, and also had been participating at the North-South Foundation for a number of years already. And one of the exercises at Business Insider was they wanted to see how an article would perform, to see if that was enough interest to lead to a film. So Chris got to writing, and I'll talk to Chris about kind of the iteration and where Akash came in and his family.
Yeah, it's pretty fitting actually that we're on a call now, kind of towards the end of the film cycle this year with Akash and Amrita, of course. Given that it all started with a Skype call, and Akash, I think
who uses that anymore?
I know what is.
Seems
Skype?
Like 19th century technology.
I know. And Akash, I think you were 6 years old at the time. It feels like a lifetime ago. And it was you and your dad, and it was an interview, and we were talking, mostly me talking to your dad, Akash. But you had some quotes, I believe. And so there were a couple articles, as Sam alluded to, and they did great, and people loved them. Spelling Bee is beloved. I think as the film shows, people just have this kind of magnetism towards it. Everyone remembers the word that they got out on in 5th grade. In 6th grade, mine was casserole, as I've been kind of telling people. Missed that
Oh,
middle
wait a minute,
letter.
Chris, how do you spell casserole?
Bart. It's Casserole. No middle A in the schwa sound.
No D.
Schwa sound, that is very, very difficult.
Straws are important.
Yeah, they're basically the sound that you hear. It's so annoying, and it's the reason why.
Is it an A?
Padme-
Is it an E? Is it an I? Is it an O? Or is it a U?
Thank you guys.
Why it's some combination. It's
You're very reassuring.
a
Thank
lot
you.
of wrong words, including mine back in 2016. Bacteria, like there is a schwa in the middle, and that I got out on.
See, you never forget it. That
Yeah.
like exhibit A right there. And so anyway, kind of just to go back to the thread, we were enamored, as everybody is, by Akash and his story and like his incredible precociousness. And we just knew that he was so awesome and wanted to include him in the story. And kind of, as we were saying earlier, like one thing leads to another. We talked to other people within the community and said, who else is kind of on your minds as really competitive spellers? And then we kind of, Sam and I put our heads together to see how we could create a diverse cast, so to speak, and of people of different genders, experience levels, and from different parts of the country to kind of create a full, comprehensive, and representative story.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things about this is that so much of it is about kids, and Sam, I think you started this before you had your first child. So what was it like to be working with and directing children? Because you've been doing esports, which I'm sure is not so much working with kids, and kids are wonderful, but what kind of challenges did you have, or what were the most fun parts of that?
The best parts were just being able to sit in a room, ask questions, and see the responses, and to hear the honest responses, the candid responses, to be, or trying to be, a fly on the wall when someone is studying, and to see that process with the parents, to see what they're doing in their room, whether it's just hanging out on the bed reading, or doodling in a pad. Like those little moments are just so special, and we captured a lot of those that ended up going in the film, I think. And then just developing the relationship with the children, and then with their families. We visited most of our spellers, I want to say it was anywhere from 2 to 4 times, and then each of those visits was anywhere from like 1 to 3 days. Then we were also at the spelling bees, and you just started to feel like you were family, or at least like some sort of relative, right? Because we would be there sometimes like 10 in the morning to like dinner time, and you're really getting a sense for the family. You're just being invited into their home. You're sharing meals, and you're filming as well. And I think that ended up becoming so special that when you got to a certain point where you felt that everyone could go about their daily life and you could just capture that. Because ultimately that's what we wanted to show. We didn't want to feel like we had to walk into these homes and say, can you study? Can you show me this hobby? Can you spell? Can you do X, Y, Z? Because this was never meant to be like a quick cutting, high energy reality show, and you wanted the verite scenes to really play out. And I think gaining the trust from the spellers and their families, and being able to be around enough, so to have the budget to be able to find the time, I think that ultimately paid off. And that gets back to the beginning of your question: what is the challenge? Being able to wait for those moments, to put in the time, to gain the trust of your subjects, because people know when things are forced, people know when things are put on, and you cannot get everything you want in one day. You cannot gain trust in one day. And I think fortunately everything came together, and we achieved that. And I think that was a credit to the planning that we all did, and the execution, but also the families for saying yes ultimately.
And it really is important to stay more than a day or an afternoon. Oftentimes when you're producing and it's like, we need to be here, we need to be here, we need to be there. But if you don't have the time, like usually in a few minutes, people tell you what they think you want to hear. And then after like an hour, people start to forget you're there. And then you sort of can get to those moments that are really kind of important. And this film is so full of so many of those great moments of kids being themselves, trying to struggle, and families also being themselves. And I also think in my experience, when you make a documentary like this, when you're spending time with so many people, the subjects are part of your lives forever. It's like they're sort of in your head. And 10 years from now, you know when Akash gets married, you will probably like be at the wedding, because it's like these are people that live inside of you. They're connections. And those, when you have those kind of connections, the films speak in much bigger terms, and they work in so much of a more clear way.
Yep. Bart, I wanted to kind of follow up on that, because I think you brought up a good point, which is that especially in this subject matter, we got a lot of questions about whether we were seeing these like the trophy kid dynamic at home, which is to say the parents really pushing their kids to do this. And how else could you explain high achieving students in like an academic competition? Clearly, there must be some sort of tiger parenting going on. And the film addresses this and from one of our social scientists. But really, in spending enough time, as you kind of alluded to, you might see, you might expect after a day, maybe they're hiding something or putting on a face. But after a whole weekend, multiple weekends, you start to realize, like, if we're trying to find this narrative of domineering parents, we're actually the ones creating it if we keep asking these questions, more so than if we just let it emerge organically. And that's what we kept finding. And it became kind of interesting for us as filmmakers as time went on, as we kept getting that question from people. We could say it became more of like an indictment of people's assumptions about how families work and how families succeed together. I was like, it's so interesting how surprising it is that cooperation, as opposed to coercion, actually yields like tremendous outcomes. And that was a real lesson for me. It was, they actually get really far by having a stronger family unit.
So, Sam, as director, do you want to talk about Akash's dramatic arc in the story?
It's such a good question. It's the amazing thing is that we got to witness 2 years of his career. And he's coming off in the film, he's coming off his first win at the San Angelo Regional Spelling Bee. So his story is starting as, can he repeat that? He's going for the second time. Can he get back to the Scripps National Spelling Bee for a second time? He was the first ever first grader to get to the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Like, it's even hard for me to just articulate right now, but it is insanely hard to get to the Scripps National Spelling Bee. These are children who are studying nearly every single day for years, and largely they're getting to the Scripps National Spelling Bee as they get older, because you're seeing more words, you're having just the cumulative effect of practicing more. He got there as a first grader. That is a huge, huge feat that he did. So he's starting off with, can he repeat that? And that's what it is. He became, can he be can he come back and make that triumphant return? So he had, in the film, he almost has like on his shoulders, like, got to get back there. You got to get back there. How am I going to increase my study? What is it that I'm going to do? And you're constantly rooting, because you don't think that was just a fluke. Like, everything that you hear from Akash, from the words that he's spelling at his age and the interview that he's giving, in those moments you're capturing, you're like, this is an extremely talented boy. And like, this is a very, very special family. And, He's right there with his sister. You know, she's helping coaching. So like you can just see the whole dynamic of that. And I'm assuming everyone has seen it. Like when Akash doesn't get to win the Scripps, when he doesn't make the regional, when he misses that word and he's not the winner and doesn't get to go to the Scripps National Spelling Bee, like I think it's just such a heartbreaking moment because you have so much that you're hoping that his story is actually going to go longer, because I think you really believe he's probably going to be easily someone that's going to go. But at the same time, it illustrates that it's just one letter. And for Akash, he does have a number of years to go. And obviously now he's since gone on and he has gone back to the Scripps National Spelling Bee and still has a number of years, but you can take his story and you can put it towards anyone. You can get that one letter wrong, and you're 14 years old, you're in 8th grade, you don't have any more opportunities to go. So he ended up being that, exemplifying that story. But Akash, I don't know, and same with Amir, I don't know if I ever told you this, but it was so difficult for us to film when you both got out at your regional, because us as filmmakers, you have to be completely dedicated, and you don't want to show emotion. You want to let things play out. But I'm telling you, inside, all I wanted to do was just cry right with you and just like hug you too, but you had to hold the camera.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. I mean, I can't trust that moment. That was like, it's really sad for me because I'd been preparing for a year, me and my sister, preparing for a year for that moment. And it just so happened to be that I missed that one word. But after that moment, I kind of decided to rebound back. And after that, I started accumulating, trying to get to know and learn as many words as possible. So eventually it just keeps coming, and it's the type of moment that sort of serves as a sort of moment when you rethink and you try to go, okay, so this is what happened. I mean, I'm pretty sad about it, but I want to come back bigger and better. So that's what I decided to do and focus on after. I wanted to come back and actually make a comeback with my career and come to the National Spelling Bee again, which I managed to do the next year, and then the year after that. And then this year the bee got canceled, which was very sad because by the way, the year before, my sister also participated in the National Spelling Bee too. So for this year, we both were preparing as hard as we possibly could. And then COVID-19 comes around, ruins basically the entire year, and then the spelling bee got canceled. And that's just a long string of events that doesn't really end well. But then again, if we look at the full picture and we see how hundreds of thousands have passed away during this COVID-19. So at that point, I decided maybe we just have to face the situation, accept it, and just move on and prepare even harder for next year. And that is what we're doing now.
Yeah, you have a great opportunity when you have another whole year to prepare. More words you can learn, and not many places else to go, so not many distractions this year.
Well, I mean, that's true.
There's a lot less distractions now, and so that's why we're preparing as hard as we can possibly can. We'll just give our all this year, and that's what we're trying to do.
So I would like to ask both of you, what it's like to be up there. You can see that there are some people, as they're trying to get the word in their head, they put their hand up and they're kind of writing it down there. And so what is your, when you hear the word, what's going on in your brain in that brief bit of time between, oh my God, do I know this word? And when it comes out of your mouth and you're trying to figure this out?
Yeah, for me personally, when I get the word, there's sort of a series of steps that I go through to determine what exactly is this word. What does it mean? Is basically, I ask as many questions as possible, just to make sure, is the word that's in my head the same as the word that the pronouncer is giving me? So I go through like a series of questions that you ask. So first I start with I'll ask if there's any alternate pronunciations, and then I go on for the language of origin, where the word comes from, then its meaning, definition, its part of speech, is a noun, verb, adjective. It is super helpful. Can you put it in a sentence? And then after asking all of this information, I ask to repeat the word one more time. And then after that, I'm ready to spell the word. And as I'm spelling the word, like, it's sort of like each letter just kind of comes in my brain and then goes out. Like, it's to sort of get each letter, focus on the next one, keep going until you reach the end of the word. And after that, the pronouncer, the judge says if it's correct or not, and if it's correct, well, I mean, that's just amazing. But it's really like that. And about you?
Okay, so like I've been to the nationals one time. That was like the latest time I've been, like in 2018. You know, 19.
There you
Okay,
go.
okay, whatever. Okay, but so the other years I was either sitting at home due to coronavirus or watching my brother on stage. And for me, it's completely different watching and then being on that stage. And like whenever I was on there, for like a little bit of time, like whenever I was first sitting on the stage, I was kind of like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. I did not know that I was actually going to be here, like, ever. And yeah, I was kind of like sitting there like, am I really here? And then by the time that it was like my turn to go spell, there's like, at first there's kind of like this anxiety, what if I get this wrong? Like, what happens then? But there's also the part of your mind that's like, no, I should get this word right and I should focus on getting that word right. So for the most part, like, I think this is a thing that happens with a lot of new spellers. I'm not counting Akash because he is special and amazing. So like he's probably like used to all the cameras and stuff, but like for people like me, it's like the cameras and everything is new and it's like incredibly distracting, but like the main focus is Dr. Bailey, what is the word and what should I do to focus on it? And partially the handwriting thing, I use it to visualize the word because it's easier for me to spell if I can like see it in some sort of way. And also because it gives me somewhere to look at that isn't the cameras. Because it's easier to focus on something else. I also ask the questions, you know, to give me a general grasp of the word or to give me something that helps. You know, the same questions that Akash asks. And then I completely shut off my mind to anything, any distractions, and try to focus Dr. Bailey, the word, and then I just spell it, and I hope that I got it right, which I did get my 2 words right in the orals, so I'm happy for that.
So I have to say that when I was watching that and I would hear all of the questions, I was thinking, well, they're just like biding for time. Like maybe the word will sort of come into your head if I ask enough questions. But it's really incredibly insightful for you to sort of go through your mental process for each of you, which, and of course it's very different, but it's like you have this incredible number of words in your head and you don't know what's coming. And then there's this fear, is this the word I know? Or is this like, if it isn't a word I know, can I construct from those pieces of information, from the sort of things from where it comes from, to kind of make sense out of that? And you know, thinking on the feet like that is a really hard thing to do. And
Yeah.
to do it at such a young age, and to do it in that way with, even though I'm sure you were all very nervous, you come off with, both of you, and all of the people there, with a sense of confidence that you wouldn't expect from people that young, I would think. And it's one of the things that's really, kind of amazing about it. So let me ask you both about this. In most sports, and like in the esports that you guys were filming before there, the people you're going against are competitors. Oftentimes there's a disliking of your competitors. And it seems to me like the people sitting on stage with you and going through this are not, obviously it's very competitive, but and everybody wants to win, but it seems like there's a true, camaraderie that's going on there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'd actually like to say something about this. There's I think this is one of the main differences between like actual physical sports, or, esports, physical sports, whatever, and like spelling bees specifically. So it's because in most sports, you have like teams going against each other, right? But like in the spelling bee, this is like individual kids trying to spell their own words correctly. So rather than focusing on each other, we're focusing on ourselves. Are we going to get this word right? So it's not like, of course there's going to be competition because like it's a competition, but it's more of, I want to get this word right, and not I want the other people to misspell. It's more of, I want to win, but also everyone else here is doing a great job, because we're not going against each other. This is like the most common phrase ever. We're going against the dictionary.
Yes. And to be fair, what you said is absolutely correct. I just want to quickly add to that. Like you said, it's kind of like what differentiates the spelling bee and these types of sports, academic sports, from most physical sports is, like you said, they got teams competing against each other. So I don't know, it kind of feels like it's a little bit forced on the sense of teams versus teams.
Yeah,
fighting. It's like I gotta win against you. Instead, it's not how that works in the spelling bee. It's not I gotta win against you. It's just I gotta win, or I gotta win, but everyone else is doing really good, and I appreciate it. This sort of appreciation of everyone else surrounding us. That's like a fundamental part that brings the camaraderie, as you said, of the spelling bee together. And
So I have to ask you this.
a
And I'll
big
get to the
benefit.
question in a second. So was there a time when somebody else gets a word and you say, dang, that's an easy word? And then when you get a word, it's like, oh, that's not fair. I got a hard word.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most common reaction ever, especially in like school spelling bees.
Yes.
Because it's like everyone, I feel like I've heard it from a lot of my friends before, like in our school spelling bees, class spelling bees, where they're like, oh, I know your word, but I got my word wrong.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a little amusing, but on the national level, I think that it still happens. It's just on a level where none of the audience can recognize it.
So it's like, your word is pibroch. Dang it, I knew that word. Pibroch is a type of Irish flute or something like that. Or it's a pipe. I think it's piping, like bagpiping. But seriously though, like you said, the overall thing is that the idea that, dang it, I knew that word, but I got my own word wrong, is the sort of thing that happens. But especially on the national stage, it's a really bad idea to not hide it, especially when you're live in front of millions of people watching on ESPN, and the entire audience, and the pronouncer and the judge and all your fellow spellers. So we basically try to hide that sort of thing. It does happen, but not as much on the national level as it is on the other lower levels.
Basically, it isn't as vocal.
Yeah, it's not as vocal.
So we have a question here from Leslie Oshman, who asks, do either of you speak other languages other than English? if so, do you use the same techniques to learn other languages? And are you as good at spelling in these other languages?
That is a great question. Well, as for speaking, not really, but I can read and write fluently 3 languages. Of course, English, but also Telugu because it is my parents' mother tongue, and also Hindi because it is the national language of India, where my parents come from. So naturally, it makes sense that I would be learning Telugu and Hindi. I can read and write them fluently. Not that much speaking, but I am sort of like naturally sort of learning it from the way my parents talk a lot, because it's kind of like bilingual language in the house a lot. And also, I kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting thing I like to do. It's like learn other languages in my spare time as a sort of hobby. I call them like learning hobby languages.
And here's like a small little thing I'd like to add to that. So whenever we're like learning spelling,
yes,
a lot of the words, they're either Latin or Greek roots or words that come from other languages. And specifically the words that come from other languages, some of them are like incredibly close to their other language counterparts. There's literally a word in the English dictionary that's German for goodbye. So yes. And so it's like we could learn languages. If we were to learn languages, we would be able to learn them easily because we recognize some of those words. Like, oh, I remember learning this back when I was doing spelling.
Here's a more arbitrary example of that. So in French, apparently the word mixed in French, and this is just an arbitrary example that I remember. The French word for mixed is mélange. And as it turns out, there's literally a word in the dictionary called mélange. So that's why I know that the French word for mixed is mélange, and the reason why the word to mix is mélanger, and so on. And plus, I really like French a lot. So bonjour, comment ça va? I know a little bit of French. It's not much, but it's some kind of thing that's really interesting to me to learn a little bit of new languages. So hallo, auf Wiedersehen, vielen Dank, that is all German, and so on. Getting to know those really helps a lot. And the only reason why I know hallo, auf Wiedersehen, and vielen Dank in German is because those are words in the dictionary.
That you need to know.
To know those is like a core part that really helps you learn more than one language when preparing for an English spelling bee, because English doesn't really change the spellings of those words when they come in English.
So something else I wanted to ask about, the people who give you the words, what do you call them? There's a word.
Pronouncer.
The what's that?
Pronouncer.
The pronouncer, right? And they're the people who also ring the bell. And
those are the judges.
The judges. So there's the pronouncer and the judges. The two of them together. What really sort of struck me is that when they ring the bell, they genuinely seem sad when they're doing that.
Yeah, and it's more like, in terms of the judge's perspective, I'm assuming, it's more of a, I wish that you would have gotten this correct, and I don't want to ring this bell genuinely, but it's my job, so I kind of have to.
Yeah, that's one way to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, and you just don't think in other areas in our lives where there are judges that they like don't want to ring the bell when they have to. They don't want to call that out. And that says something about the community surrounding the whole event, and how people have respect for just being there means something, and they understand what that means.
Yes, exactly.
So Chris, tell us about like what's having a film on Netflix has done to you.
What it's done to me.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly fun to say. It's a joy. I mean, it's the greatest joy that could have come from this movie. And being able to share it with Sam makes it even sweeter. Like having a creative partner to be able to like be with be with like during the lows and the periods of despair of like, oh, are we ever gonna sell this thing? To like, oh my gosh, like we have an agent and it's gonna be on Netflix. Like this is surreal. And so I've like spent a lot of this year processing what it means for this movie to be on Netflix, but like we're stoked. It's incredible. Like it's a dream come true, and we couldn't have found a better place for it to live. It's just awesome.
So we had a question about how old are all of you? Sam, you go first.
Sorry, what was the
How
question?
old are you?
I'm kidding. I'm 34.
Great.
I am 29.
29. Oh my gosh, so young.
Yes.
All
And
right.
then we,
And
we'll
you
go
go.
in
My
descending
turn now?
order.
Okay.
Let's go in descending
Okay.
order now.
I'm 13, I think.
And I'm 11.
11.
The
And
youngest.
like it's really hard to believe that when we started this, Akash, you were 5, so Amrita, you were 8. And that the almost a 5-year journey from those initial phone calls to it getting on Netflix this past summer. And it's just so hard to believe that much time has passed. And obviously you're not working on the film every single day, and there are a lot of times where nothing is happening. You're working on other projects, life is going by. But it's such an interesting moment in time because our film is a time capsule of 2017, and a portion of 2016 with some of that footage. So I know it's a little odd for me because I hear all the characters in lines from the films. Like that is my world. You know, that's from editing it, from looking at all the cuts with Chris. And I have never been in a documentary, but I don't even know what the other side looks like as being someone like Amrita and Akash, who are several years removed from filming it and looking back on themselves.
Yes.
But it's just such an interesting process when you're making a film like this that is looking at a specific year, and then eventually you all get older and then it's released.
Yeah. One thing I like to say is really quickly is this movie, because of how long it took, like I've gone through 3 apartments and 2 relationships over the course of making the movie, and actually met my current fiance through making this movie. And so Sam, thank you for facilitating that when hiring a certain person in Virginia to help crew. But yeah, it's one of those things where it becomes your life. It's not just a movie that I was making on the side. And by the same token, the people involved become your life too.
And indeed, there's this phenomenon, Sam, that is like, as when you're working on a film like this, the words that people said are in your head, and there's an intimacy you have with people that don't even know that you have that intimacy. And that's a really kind of an interesting, privileged, and crazy world of what an editor kind of goes through. So for both of you, Sam and Chris, having seen them for 5 years, how have you seen them grow? What have you seen that's different from when you first met them to when they are now? Because I'm sure they were just incredibly shy in the very beginning and wouldn't say anything to anybody. And
right, it was very difficult for anyone to say anything to us. But no, I think what we saw from the very beginning, those aspects, those characteristics, those traits have only blossomed and developed even more. I mean, you talk about the poise that these kids, and not just who we have here, but as we've seen the other spellers in the film, it just gets better. And so you're talking poise, you're talking their knowledge, you're talking their life experiences, their accolades. you start realizing like, oh, this speller is now in high school and they're part of this club. They won this award. It has nothing to do with spelling, but you knew that they were going to get some award like that, or they were going to be doing an exchange program. Tejas Muthusamy, who's in the film, he was doing an exchange program in Turkey at one point, and like all these other things, you just end up being like, I'm not surprised, because what they showed from when we were with them, you knew nothing was going to change. It was just going to develop even more. And to see that at such a young age, and then to see it only a couple of years later, you can only be so excited to see what they have in store for them 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now.
You know, to me, the learning all of the words and to do the spelling shows a sense of infinite curiosity, and just hearing them talk about how you think about the word from coming from this language and going through that process. And people that have infinite curiosity do well in so many things in life. So there are so many open possibilities because of the way your brains think, and the thirst for more knowledge and more of this. And so there are so much greatness ahead. And we, you know, look forward to sort of understanding and knowing all of that, except I don't want to put any pressure on you because that kills everything. So for the filmmakers, I do want to ask you quickly, because we're running out of time. One, somebody asked, were you influenced by Hoop Dreams? And two, the question one always has to ask at the end, what are you guys working on now that you've had a hit on Netflix? And Chris doesn't need to look for a girlfriend anymore.
I can go first, Sam. I'll let you have the final word on that. I am actually working at Business Insider again, and working on a side, not a documentary, but I'm working on screenwriting and screenplay, and trying to kind of, true to the spirit of growing, trying to learn other skills in that domain. And Sam, I'll let you field the Hoop Dreams question too.
The short answer is no. That was not an influence on this film. But you know, there were a number of other films that were influences. I mean, even just Spellbound, that was the film that came before us.
Sure.
Because there were things that film did very well. This was a different film. There were also things that we heard from the community about the film that we did not want to repeat and wanted to be more aware of. But it was such a breakout film that it did so many things right, and we wanted to capture the same excitement of the spelling bee. And I think we took a lot from sports films too, because this is a sports film. We knew it couldn't be round after round, and ultimately come off boring, because these are not boring when you go to them, these bees, and like the drama is there. So that's what we said from the beginning. Like, we have to take from sports films, we have to give this high energy, so people can root for these spellers. There's also a film, now this was not inspiration, but this was almost like, I'd say, the counter, Trophy Kids. And Chris turned me on to this. If you haven't seen it, this is parents, I think, there's a football player, there's tennis, and it's the parents and their kids who are playing. And every single child in that film cries at some point because of the intensity of the pressure, and from their parents as well. So like, there were also things in that we had in our mind that went into this, knowing that like, this is not that film. So a lot of things, you know, kind of came together for this one. There are a handful of films that I'm researching right now that I'm looking to develop in some conversations with some distributors. But honestly, I just want to get through December, and I just want to get through 2021, or get to 2021. But I think the focus and what I continue to look for is similar stories like this one, in that the story is almost under your nose. Everyone is watching it happen, but no one has really decided to ask why or to dive deeper into it. And that also goes to the curiosity thing that you talked about. I mean, the curiosity that Chris had for this trend, that plays right into the whole idea of curiosity that you were speaking about, because to look at this trend and then to say, like, well, why is this happening? It can't just be one thing. There have to be more. And then ultimately you go deeper, and there it is. Well, there are a lot of reasons.
So I had a question here for Akash to tell us about your Instagram show.
Yeah, so I have an Instagram page, and there every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time, very important, at 9 a.m. Central Time every Saturday, I do an Instagram Live, and it's basically about like the news of the week. Sometimes I like to interact with my viewers. You can go check it out, all of you, if you want to. It's over at my Instagram page. It's just akash.vukoti. You can go ahead and check that out. And I also have a YouTube page. This is just self-promotion. I also have a YouTube page with over like 225 something thousand subscribers, which is absolutely mind-blowing. Even I can't believe it. But there I post educational videos on loads of different topics. And if you want to know more about me, then I also have Wikipedia page, and I also have a website. So there's all of the information, so you can go ahead and check that out to the viewers. And by the way, just quickly wanted to say thank you so much to the Video Association of Dallas for having me and my sister on the show. And on behalf of the Spelling the Dream team and crew, I just wanted to thank the VAD for hosting this film. It's
Thank you so much.
an honor from.
I have one last question for Sam and Chris. Spending so much time in this community, have you learned how to cook and appreciate Indian food? And what do you make at home?
The cooking is not there, but the appreciation is extremely there. I mean,
What's
we
your
were
favorite
so
dish?
fortunate to be treated to some amazing meals. And I think that was the moment when I think Chris and I felt like we were family, when we could enjoy meals together. And there were even elements of, like, I don't want to impose, we're the crew. Like, no, let you get back to your family life. And they would always be like, no. You're not going to come into our home and just leave. And at that moment, it was such a joy because we stopped rolling. And we
When you stopped rolling, those are the great moments.
Yes, no, you're very right. But at that moment, at that hour, everyone needed to just put down the camera and just say, "Let's just enjoy."
Yeah,
but and I'll let Chris get his take on it too.
Oh, I mean, the cooking's. We've tried making certain dishes, but we'll get chai tea at Starbucks. But I have not learned anything that culinary wise. Picked up some spelling tips, but nothing in the kitchen.
Well, I want to thank all of you. This has been such a pleasure to share your story and to share your spirit, and it's really, really wonderful. You guys, I know you have like anything in front of you you can do, and that goes for all four of you, because you all have had your own success in this, and you have much success in the future, and we look forward to seeing your next film, and gosh knows what you guys are going to be able to do. You guys should learn how to make films, because that's going to be really great.
Yeah, sounds really fun. So
Yes, I actually want to do that. Maybe sometime in the future when we grow up, I want
like
to
just
as a nice little hobby that
yeah.
but probably becomes a little bit of a passion maybe. To be fair, I would probably credit both Sam and Chris for that, because the experience of working with them is just amazing. We had so much fun talking to them and working with them and the crew. So big thank yous to the director, Sam, and the producer, Chris. You both are amazing. And to the entire crew, thank you all so much. It was super amazing working with you all. And it's like we just basically became friends, basically. It's amazing. And
Indeed. Well, that's all the time we have tonight, guys. Thank you so much. It's like you never know when you start a conversation where it's going to go. And this was just so enjoyable. Thank you all. We hope to see you next week and the week after. And the week after, we'll be here every Wednesday night in the Central Time Zone at 7:30. Guys, thank you all. It's
Yeah,
been
thank you, Bart. It was
such a
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks for
Bart.
having us.
thank
Good
you
seeing
so
you,
much.
Akash and Rita.
Yeah.
all right.